outside of the class. Okay, so good morning, and we're covering Chapter 4, Costing and Pricing for Transportation. So there's these two different terms. Rates, that was used before deregulation, and that means that there was a lot of rules that were done away with. And then you got pricing, and that's after deregulation. And if we're kind of going to go over what those basic differences are between prices and rates as we look through here, but this gives us a broad overview. On the rate side, it's a lawful charge that a carrier can impose on a commodity or movement. So there was rules on how much you could charge. It might not be the right price, but it was enough to keep folks in business. And it was primarily determined on what it cost the carrier to bring it to you. So if they looked at fuel and labor and equipment wear and tear, and it was $1 a mile, then they allowed them like a 5% profit margin, so they could charge you $1.05. And so that was the rate for using a truck. If you used a train, it'd be like 50 cents. If you used a plane, it'd be like $2. So there was a specific rate determined without any other considerations. Now, if we look at price, after the deregulation, when they pulled all of these constraints back, they're free to charge whatever rates and operate wherever they choose geographically. So this was mainly to overcome the problems they were having with rail, where they had these different regions that were claimed by different, and today it's the same story, where it's such a high cost for maintaining rail and operating in different parts of the country that just because of that, there's just 4 major players when it comes to the rail system. But that was why they deregulated, was because of air and rail more so than motor carrier. But everybody benefited in it. And so now it's market driven. So it's how much would people pay to use my service to deliver. And I'm in direct competition with all the other modes of transportation. I'm in direct competition with other people within my particular field. So it's a customer-friendly environment, which is always good for business. So if we look at how a market structure is set up, because it says it's going by market influence, we see this high and lows chart for if it's pure competition, which means everybody has the same equal opportunity to reach customers and to provide a service, versus low competition, where there's few sellers, it's a monopolistic. If I'm the only train that takes stuff from Mississippi to California, you're going to pay my rate or not use the train. And then if we look at the size of sellers and buyers, so if there's a lot of people that are using the trains versus a lot of people using trucks, which is where most of the variety is, there's a lot more competition with motor transport than there is with air or rail or seagoing, then chances are that there's more competition, and there's versus because there's more people involved in it, versus small competition because there's very few buyers or sellers that are involved in it. And so this is kind of given the market restrictions and the demand elasticity. What's elasticity mean in the terms as far as when we talk about pricing and rates? Did you remember reading about that?
I'm thinking it's like it go electricity, okay. So that like kind of like supply and demand, right? So like if everybody wants this, then that price is going to go up that way. If they don't want it, then it's going to go. So it's kind of like a pool as far as the price, and wherever there's high demand, then it's going to be more. The price is going to be going higher. That's
okay.
what I believe.
So if I had let's look at it this way. If I had a low value item, say I'm transporting recycled cardboard, and the cost that I'm getting, or the price that I'm getting for that, basically is just, you know, $90 to go from here, a truckload from here to Cincinnati. So now I'm the same company, and I got the same truck and the same trailer, but I'm taking iPhones from Indianapolis to Cincinnati. I'm not charging them that $90. Now I'm charging them like $125 because it's a lot higher risk taking this more valuable product. There's more risk that it might be damaged. And I have to handle these boxes, each one of those, to be loaded and unloaded. They're not on pallets. And so there's more handling involved in it. But let's say that the cardboard people said, hey, can you give us a better discount? Well, no, I can't, because I'm giving you what it cost me basically to get there. There's no elasticity in this. I'm giving you the lowest possible rate or price that I can, because you have a low value, just one chunk, and I can dump it, cargo. You're getting bare bones. Whereas if the folks with the iPhones talk to me, and it's really costing me like $80 to go down there, then that gives me this $30 of wiggle room that I can come up with a way to beat the competition, or I could give a better price to a customer that I've had this relationship with. So that elasticity basically is how much wiggle room is there between the cost to provide the service and the actual price that you charge to provide the service. And a lot of that has to do with the value of the cargo. And we'll see how that works out when we get through here. So 4 types of markets, depending on whatever their situation is the commodity, which was the example I just gave you with recycled cardboard and iPhones, 2 different commodities. And then geographical points, if it's leaving from Indianapolis and going to Cincinnati, in that example, that's one situation that would be different than, say, if it was leaving New York and it had to be in LA. There's a different geographical point that it leaves from and it arrives to. That is how we figure out distance, miles, and all that kind of things come into the geographical points that it travels through. And then, of course, the route. If I had to take it by sea to get to California instead of by truck, there'd be a different whole situation based on how we shipped it, by what route. And then the intermodal competition, I could even put it on a train because it's going all the way across the country. And the rule of thumb is anything over 300 miles, you should consider rail, because you can get a better discount for distance. So these are the 4 things that I have to put into play when I'm figuring out in the market which mode of transportation, or how do I get the best price or rate for doing business with that mode of transportation. So here's where it's going to define and compare cost of the service versus value of the service. And just at first glance, what do you think of when I tell you this is the cost of the service, from that example I gave you about the truck hauling cardboard to Cincinnati? What? That was the example of cost of service, because I'm just charging bare minimum. Whereas the value of service, we've got to provide other things, like with the iPhones, handling the boxes and the high risk of damaging these more expensive cargo. We have to provide that value to and cover the compensation for that. So this talks about average cost approach, where it's an average or of what it costs, or it's the full allocated cost of what it is to provide that service. And then we have the marginal or variable cost approach, and that's based on the cost of producing one more unit of output. In other words, if I needed to go one more stop or one more delivery, how much more would that cost? So I have a truck, it's in Cincinnati already, and I just offloaded all the cardboard. and then they're at this cardboard place and say, hey, could you take this plastic to Louisville? And so since the truck's that closer to Louisville and it's already on the road, could that variable approach give them a better rate cost? And this kind of gives a structural diagram, a little bit of equation here where we're providing something in the quality and the quantity of it. But the demand is what drives the average revenue. So if it's so much every cycle, every month, every year, whatever, then the demand will be where we go for it. And so there's going to be some high points and low points during that time cycle, and we want to get the average cost across the board. And so if we're looking at it costs this $80 for the truck, for the driver, the fuel, and the wear and tear on the equipment, then that would be our marginal cost, what it's the bare essentials that it is to come into it. And where all of these cross is where we get these different price points. So we'll see what that looks at, and this was a decreasing cost situation where we're trying to make a better price plan than what we were currently having. So we'll see how this plays out. So there's a floor and a ceiling basically in what we can charge for a price, and this elasticity is the difference between that floor and the ceiling. Like I gave you in the example with the truck, we have this $90, and that's what it costs to provide that service, period. That's the fuel, the truck, the wear and tear, licensing, and all that stuff. And then you have an average cost, and that's like getting somewhere around 11% markup or 11% for providing that service. That's what our profit would be, or that's what the competition's average charge is. And then we have the value cost, in other words, the premium cost that we would charge. And that could be if we're hauling these iPhones that have to be handled more, or we're calling a cargo that costs a lot more, and there's more risks that if we do damage that we have to replace, there's more costs associated with it. So this is that window that we're talking about here, between $90 and $110 in this example. And so looking at different ways that we're going to charge, and this again is the iPhone thing, where we're going to charge based on the value of the product that we're moving. And face it, if something costs a lot more, chances are it's in high demand, and that it's going to sell for a lot more. And so there's an opportunity for whoever we're doing business with, say the Apple Store, to make more profit than these recycled cardboard boxes this manufacturer recycled cardboard would. And so it's like you're selling something to somebody that drives up in a Mercedes versus you're selling to somebody who walks up that doesn't even have an automobile. There's different brackets, or there's different opportunities to make more money off of one versus the other based on the elasticity there. And so that was when it was set up with regulations, there was a major way that you got charged a rate based on the value of the commodity. And it still does come into play for certain equations, because you got the extra added risk of losing or destroying or replacing some of that high value cargo that you're dealing with. And here it discusses a little bit about these three things coming into these three conditions, saying that there is some type of third degree price discrimination. In other words, there is some stuff that's going on that shouldn't be. And so the seller must be able to separate buyers into groups or submarkets according to their different elasticity of demand. So I've got, I'm a seller of iPhones, and I should be able to look at these different ways that I want to transport it based on their elasticity. In other words, there's a truck already coming back from Cincinnati to Indianapolis. It's empty. I should have access to that backhaul and get a better price because of the free market approach. I should get a better deal because they're going to haul that truck back empty and lose $80 to pay for the truck and the fuel and the wear and tear on the truck. I should be able to get a rate that's $80 or less instead of this $110 that they just charged me. The seller must be able to prevent the transfer of sales between the submarkets. So this is saying that it's unfair if I have influence over you. I've got such a large dominant influence like the rail companies that I keep you from using a smaller rail provider because you have to come out on my, they'd have to lease my rail or they'd have to use my cars. And if I don't offer that opportunity, then that's unfair, monopolistic type things that deal into price discrimination. And then the seller must possess some degree of monopoly power. That's what I was leading to with not letting them use their rails or their cars. So those three things are where you have a basis to file a suit or bring up a complaint about price discrimination, improper pricing. But this is how you can use the system. It's finding a way to get the best value is using differential pricing. And that's using by time. You know, if I've got more time, then I'll use rail or I'll use sea. I won't use air or truck. By place, if it's a coastal delivery, that might be an easy decision to make with using ships. If it's in the Sahara Mountains somewhere where there's no water or airports, then it kind of limits you to what type of pricing and differentiation you can get in your services there. And by the individual person. So it could be that somebody prefers you to get it there by air because they don't want anybody to mess with their iPhones. They don't want them to be touched and they want to be there to pick it up at the airport when it gets to the destination. Or by commodity, same thing. If it's high value or if it's say something that's security risk, it's some type of serum or it's some type of weaponry or whatever, the commodity could dictate how it's handled and thus how we charge them the pricing for each one of these different differentials. So here we got the floor and the ceiling pricing for value added. It says the value of the service is price floor and price ceiling. The marginal cost defined as the variable cost of providing the service. So on the accounting perspective, on the books, it says I had one truck that was used with one driver and this is how much fuel that was consumed. So that's the accounting perspective. If we look at the economic perspective, you got the cost of service, the floor price, and the value of the service as a price ceiling. So the marginal costs are defined as costs that would be avoided if the service wasn't provided. So if I turn down these extra steps to deliver the iPhones, like no, we don't want to unload it and load it, and no, we don't want to have the truck there an extra hour to do that. If I turn those down, if I didn't offer that value added service, then I'd lose that whole transaction. And so there'd be a loss. It'd be a minus 90 or 110. And so you have the accounting perspective, you got the economic perspective on what the floor and the ceiling prices should be. This kind of gives a little chart of what that looks like. And this is, if we're talking about loss minimization, it's that backhaul. It's that empty truck that's got to come back to Indianapolis after it drops off in Cincinnati. And so in this case, 90 is where we're calling the bottom, the floor, and then we're trying to get this average, which is 100 for our rate or our price. But if there's a premium opportunity where we're handling high cost or high risk freight, or we have to handle it a certain way, then we're going to go for this value added service of 110. Now we're down there and we've offered this value added service. We got an empty truck, a driver, and the fuel that it's going to cost to get back to Indianapolis. Well, it's going to cost us $90. But if we can find cardboard to bring back or anything to bring back on that backhaul where we can actually offset, minimize our loss, then maybe $80 is the new floor now. And so instead of losing $90, we're only losing $10 off of our expense of our floor base. And if we made $20 off of that customer, we can absorb some of that loss and still come out with a profit. And so these are the different things where if there's an opportunity to maximize profit, do it. But you still have to know that there's going to be some situations where you're just going to minimize your losses to try to keep the the actual transaction cost, the total transaction cost down. And so this is giving an example with that backhaul where you're going to have nothing and you still had to pay the driver and the fuel and the wear and tear on the truck. This kind of breaks it down into more of they give the example of a head haul where they're making 110, and then I don't know if I got, what's my next one? They got the backhaul where they know there's not a chance that they're going to make that 110, but they take the average of what it would cost to get back with cargo and without cargo, and it's $50. And so when they look at how much they made going down, which was the $20, this is talking about the marginal cost or variable cost of the service is the $20. So in this example I gave you, it was 80. Here they're actually coming back empty and they don't have anything in it, and they're taking the average of what the cost was, the second half of it. It's $100, so that's 50 down and 50 back, and that's how they're figuring out how much their loss was on this floor for backhaul. This, if you do this too often, then you're losing money every transaction, and your competition is going to be all over that. So that's kind of giving you a perspective of how they set the ceiling on what they're going to charge if it's a high value delivery of a product, or how they set the floor if it's going to be a low value product that you're delivering, and then how to offset the loss of coming with a backhaul that has either a discounted freight in it or it has nothing in it. Okay, if I can get this going here. Now we're going to bump that against how the market influxes how they set the rates. And again, this is one of those things where it'd be nice to have a handout even after you're in the industry and they have software that's developed that has every product that's produced has a classification. And that classification classifies its value, its size, and its weight. And so one of our case studies we're actually going to do is going to put that practice into play, where we're going to move from changing the classification of our product from one to another, and to see if our costs for delivery and transport are affected by that. So, but this is talking about how they coming up with rates. And there's class rates, exception rates, commodity rates, and then these special rates. And each one of these are based on what part of the economy we're dealing with. You know, if we're dealing with perishable agriculture, if we're dealing with heavy equipment or oil or coal or whatever, there's different kinds of rates that those people feel the most comfortable operating in. And this makes it a little bit simplified. We're going to, for rate classifications, we got the minimum number of shipping points, and then it has a table of rates based on the points and the number of points. So if I had a truck that had 3 stops that it was going to have to make, and it left from New York and it was going to California. If it was going from New York to California, it would have to go through these different shipping points, and each one of those would add by miles more to the rate that would be charged for that freight. And depending on where it's going to end up, it could be higher or lower based on what the local conditions are there for labor and for the use of the port or the dock or whatever. So every zip code, if you want to put it that way, when you look at shipping, when you order something offline, it'll ask you for the zip code. What they're doing is they're figuring out how far it's going to go and how many of these different shipping points it have to go through to get to you. It could be it's not going to leave straight from the manufacturer and land on your door. It's going to have to come from a warehouse that's halfway between where it's made and where you live. So all those things go into play to figure out the rate. And then we have the number of commodities that are involved. So if I am delivering and I'm working on some type of a transportation pricing for, let's say, Goodyear tires, and we're only delivering tires, it's one commodity. And so I have maybe a truck with special lift or whatever for bigger tires or whatever, but I have the equipment and the operator and that's going to be the same type of setup each time. There's no special equipment, special operator, special loading or handling. It's the same every time. Versus if I have this mixed load that has tires in one section and say headlights is the rest of the trailer load. Well, I have to handle those two different cargoes differently, where tires, there's not a whole lot that you can do to them to damage them. It's a tire. I mean, you can expose it to superheat, something, I mean, catch it on fire. It's pretty tough to damage a tire. Whereas a light bulb, a headlight for like a car, it's really easy to damage that. And so there's different shipping, handling, and there's different costs involved in that. And the commodity is based on its, we're going to touch on that shortly, but it's based on its durability and its ease of handling and its risk of damage. And so tires and headlights are like the both ends of the scale when it comes to classifications on what the commodity is. And looking at, this is given an example of points that they use, or these different, like they're going to go through different zip codes. These would tell us if it was going to Cincinnati, Ohio, it'd be 550. It went from Sheboygan, is that Michigan? If it left from Clare, that's Minneapolis, I'm sorry. Sheboygan, Minneapolis, it was 550. If it left from Clare, it was 400. If it left from Flint, that's Michigan, all of those are, it was 275. And so the point that it starts from has a lot of influence, and where it's going to, of course, has a lot of influence on what the rate's going to be. So anything that left out of Flint and went to any of these 4 stops was still half the cost that it would be to leave from Clare or Sheboygan. So you can look at what the destinations are too. If they're going to Chillicothe, these are all going from Michigan to Ohio, so it's probably part of something like automotive manufacturing. And you got Cincinnati, Ohio, Columbus, and Dayton, Ohio. Each of these are farther, maybe, than the one precluding it, and that, or they could be, like in the case of Columbus and Flint, that it's not farther, or Daytona and Flint. But if it has to leave one zone, zip code, and cross these other zones, then there is a number assigned to that that multiplies how much per mile it costs to get there. So there's national scale, and then there's a classification scale that tells us which way is how we're going to charge our customer. And all of this is through automation, but it's just, this is to show you what makes up these different types of quotes you're going to get for a price. And it is pretty heavy duty dry. I don't want anybody falling asleep on me here. So let's look at this next one. And it's talking about the national and the classification rates. This is what the item is. So it says it's plastic metals other than expanded. And it's got sheet or plates of plastic, and it can come in rolls or coils, boxes or crates. So that's what that item number is. And this is telling what their classification is, if it's less than a truckload, and then if it's a truckload. And then if it's mixed from a warehouse or whatever is what the other one is. So these are the different components that come up with the rate. If it exceeds 9 feet 6 inches in 2 dimensions, or 20 feet in 1 dimension, then that can't be it's going to disrupt a truckload, because it's taking up so much of the trailer space, being that long or that wide. And so there's different classes now that if I put it in a less than truckload, it'd be all the way up to 85. But if it was a whole truckload of the same thing, say these 20-foot things were basketball goals or something, and I had a whole truckload of them, this is a total load, then it'd be almost half the price if I was just to put some of them with other product. And so these rate classes have to do with if you're mixing it or if you're sending a whole shipment of the same thing. And this next classification is plastic or rubber articles other than expanded group, consisting of foam, cellular, expanded, sponges. I mean, it gets down into a description of what the actual product is that's being shipped. And each one of these have a pre-designated classification number. They have an item number and a classification number. And depending on how big it is or how much it weighs, they can add these other sub rates to it. So this is, if there was a printed manual, there'd be one of these for every single item that's being shipped. It'd fall under one of these different ratings. If you're sending light bulbs, you were sending potato chips, anything, it would fall under a rating in a table like this. Through automation, you're not going to read a big 3-ring binder book, but it'll come up and it'll tell you based on what you type in what its classification and rate is. In procurement, that really does come into play when you're trying to procure different transportation options. So the other things that play into how much we're going to charge is the density, how much it weighs per hundredweight. So if I've got 100 pounds of bricks and 100 pounds of foam, 100 pounds of bricks I could probably put in the back seat of a car. If I got 100 pounds of foam, I'm going to need a trailer to haul that 100 pounds of foam. I mean, it's density, how much weight it takes up per square foot or square inch. And stowability and handling reflects the cost of carrier for securing and handling the products. And that was, again, the example with the tires and the headlights. There's different stowability and handling involved in those two different products that makes the tires relatively cheap because you can't damage them and you're just going to stack them. Whereas the headlights, they can't be double stacked. They can't put them on a pallet and then put another pallet on top of them. And so they're only single height. They can't put a lot of weight on top of a cardboard box with glass in it. And they have to be handled differently. And then, of course, the liability is the tires. It's not that much of a liability. The headlights, much liability that you're going to probably break the corner ones or the outside row of them. There's going to be costs that you as the shipper are going to absorb because you didn't deliver it operational. You delivered it busted up. And so that goes into when you're making your price quote. You're going to have those damages covered, a percentage of it, based on what you charge to deliver it. And then we look at, I didn't get this thing to wake up here. And so we have to figure out, one, rate-based points and grouping tariff. So this is how far is it that we have to move it? And then 2 is there a number that's in there that's going to make it a higher class rate where we're going to charge more or less? So we're going to have the zip code know where it's going to be going. But now we have to figure out, are we sending tires or are we sending headlights, to figure out exactly what the final cost is going to be. And 3, it's determining its class rating and classification to figure out if it even should be shipped together. There's certain things that you don't ship together based on chemical or based on what have you, hazard or handling. And tires and headlights probably would not come in on the same truck in large quantities, but if you had, say, a automobile parts store and you only needed 2 tires, they put those on that same load with your headlights and your interior bulbs and your antifreeze oils, all that kind of stuff. So it really has determined based on the end user. Is it going to one place? Is it going to several places? That comes into this classification as well. So when we look at how we this exemption rates, an exemption rate is a modification to the national classification. So if there was something that was done like to make something less susceptible to damage, like it's put in a plastic crate that's bubble wrapped and suspended in foam or something, they would make an exception because there's been a change in how that normally is packed or it's normally prepared to ship. Modifications may be made in the rating, minimum weight, and the density group. And so if we're modifying how much it costs to ship mattresses, because some of them are made with foam and coils and wire and wood, and I'm sorry, and other ones are made with just an air mattress where it just has basically plastic and you fill it up with air, then we'd probably go in to ask for an exception to move that particular mattress because it's not made like the other mattresses. And then does it not have to be, there doesn't have to be an exception rate for every class rate. And so there's some things that if you're moving it, shippers don't have to offer you an exception in it, because it's, even if you did do something a little different, like in the case of the mattresses, and make it take up less density, it still has to be handled a certain way to make sure that it gets to the end user. And here it's got the commodities listed. This is rubber, reclaimed, liquid, or paste, and where it's being shipped from and where it's being shipped to. And this is telling how much it costs per 100 pounds to ship it. And this is the minimum weight. So before I send a truck out there that can haul 18 to 20,000 pounds, I want to make sure I'm picking up at least a ton of something. And then, and so even if I get 500 pounds, I charge them for 2,000 pounds. There's a minimum to make sure that our costs are covered to make that pickup. And so that's why you actually have these partial loads. You got TLs, truckloads, and then you have less than truckload, is because they have the opportunity to charge these minimums. They can actually make up their loss differences and all these different stops and these different rates that they have to deal with in classifying this mixed trailer of different products. So this is one of those things that makes it feasible for them to do business with people. There's a minimum for them to come and pick up your product. And this is touching on these less than a trailer load and then a trailer load rate, multiple car rates, that's your rail carriers, and then these different rates that apply to minimum weights or quantities that you're going to ship. And then this is sometimes used when you're trying to use a whole train with several cars that have coal on it or they have grain. So you have these flat cars or you have these container cars, and you have more than one, you got 2, 3, 5, 10, 15 of them with the same product on it, then there's a different rate that would be applied there. You get this bulk discount. And then you got the per car or per truckload rate. So that train could have 50 cars, and on each one there's something different. There'd be a different rate for each one of those people or each one of those commodities to move. And then you got any quantity rates, and that's usually found with large, bulky commodities. And where, let's say I send my, during the harvest time, I'm sending oranges, or I'm sending some type of a perishable vegetable or something by truck. And then the next month it's going to be a different type of vegetable or fruit by truck. These any quantity rates allow whoever that is that's using the transportation to have this set cost, so they can continue to operate knowing what it's going to cost them to transport. A truckload of watermelons is going to be the same as a truckload of oranges, is going to be the same as a truckload of pineapple or grapefruit. So you can get this any quantity, you get to use a truck just based on I'm leasing that truck to haul my stuff, no matter what I put in it. Then you got the density rates. Those come into play when we're talking about using air. If it's too heavy, then chances are it's not going to be something that you want to ship by air. If it's too large and it may be lightweight, chances are you don't want to send it by air. But the density rates are really looking at how much they're going to charge per pound to do business with you. And so that's most important with air transport, so they know how many customers or how many different containers they can take. If it's rail or truck, they just put it on another car or another trailer. In the air, you have to put it on another plane, and that's a whole new cost associated with using 2 plane loads instead of just 1 plane load. And here, of course, we're looking at where it's going to leave and where it's going to end. And this is kind of covering all of the different things that go into play. You got local rates, joint rates, per mile rates, terminal to terminal rates, and then you have these group rates that could be applied. So this has to do with distance or location based on zip code that you're transporting through. And then the time, of course, if it's got to be done quickly, it's not going to be put on a boat or a train. So we have to have a higher rate for quicker service gets figured into it. And these fall under special rates. And then you got contracted rates. So if I had, say, a Christmas tree farm, and I contract this transportation company to pick up my Christmas trees every November, October and November to send out, I can protect myself by getting a contract with them a year ahead, maybe 2 years or 5 years. And so if the fuel prices go up, or if changes happen in legislation, or say my market, I want to expand it or whatever, having a contracted service is good for the customer, and it's really good for the service provider, because that's known receivable accounts receivable. And then we have the special rates that are continued here with deferred delivery, where let's say I want you to pick it up from my plant, but I want you to store it, and then 2 weeks from now I want you to come back and deliver it to my customer. That we incorporate the cost of handling. If I've got something coming off of a ship and it's at a port in New York, and I don't need that for another 3 weeks, or they can't make it through customs until 3 weeks, there's going to be a different rate, because it has to be stored during that 3 weeks. And then these other rates that get added to it, if it's empty haul, 2 or 3 way rate, spot market rate, all of those are special circumstances that add cost, or they could be a discount that's added to it based on volume or continued business, or if it's circumstances that I've got an empty truck, I'm going to give you a special rate just to get that back to my main hub. So how do we manage this? Well, before deregulation, they had price lists that basically told what it costs for each of the services. And there wasn't really any incentive for, if I'm a truck driver, I got a trucking company and my competition is out there, we both went by the same price structure. And so if I'm trying to hire the best deal before deregulation, I'm hosed because I'm going to pay the same price no matter where I go. After deregulation, now it's more competitive. Its pricing decisions are coming from what the customers want. The government has some charges in there, like for road tax and licensing and all that, but they don't really have this regulatory type of crushing control over what your prices are. And then you have competition. And it opened this up for all different types of transportations to either work together or work in any place that they want to provide their service. So naturally, the prices come down on what it costs to use transportation. And for management, I think the number one thing we want to look at is customer service. And that's because without customers, nothing else here matters. Without customers, you can't grow a business. Without customers, you can't be successful. Who's going to be using your service? And so if we don't concentrate first and foremost on making our customers happy with our pricing and with our contracts and our special different types of offers that we have, then we can't stay in business. So you want to have these relationships with your customers that it's long-standing, that they keep coming back to you to use you over and over to be able to build your company and to build these different relationships with your customers. When you look at the government influence, economic regulations and antitrust enforcement, those are policies that make sure that you're not a monopoly and that you're not trying to dominate or keep other people from entering in as competitors, and making sure that whatever you're providing is safe and it's, you know, the risk to your customers is reduced. And then you've got these different members that come in where they may invest, say I'm paying $100 to move a box from my front door to China. Well, it's going to have to go through a truck. It might get on a small truck, then a semi, then a train or a plane, and then it's going to end up on a ship to get to China. It could fly there. Seldom do they. But it's having an intermodal relationship where they can take their piece of whatever that cost was to transport that particular item. It may be that the majority of it goes to air, even though it only took it like 500 miles, and the ship's going to take it 3,000 miles. So you can't really do it per mile. It could be whatever that particular mode of transportation, what their normal costs are. And then, of course, the competition. And if you can't get what you want out there from like a third party, or you can't get it from, you're not getting the right customer service, you do things like Walmart and you just have your own truck fleet. And they probably have some of their fleet that works with barges and with ships and with planes. To some degree, they're going to be invested to make sure their warehouses and their fulfillment centers are taken care of from that warehouse to their stores. But they still have to worry about competition coming in from, say, if I'm buying turkeys, is making sure that I get the best price from the different people who are in that particular market. And the transportation end of it, are they delivering them in refrigerated trailers that will stay on site until they're put in my refrigeration? Or are they charging me per minute to set at my dock. There's different things you have to take into consideration when you're looking at the competition as far as providing those services. So the three major categories they have for setting your prices based on what they have in a new price or a new service. It's sort of, if you remember your marketing where you have the entry of a new product and then it goes through a growth and a maturity and then decline. Well, it's the same thing when you got a new service. So if I just develop this delivery, say from Amazon, where they're going to have a person drive their own car to my front door and deliver my product to me, then the price of that particular service is new based on what the demand is. So if I really, really want something delivered to me by 4 o'clock today, I might be willing to pay an extra $5 for that. And that's how they set their pricing, is it's based on customer demand. And then they're going to modify their prices over time where they come up with better ways to do business. They come up with, say, instead of a driver delivering it to me, now it's a drone. And I don't have to give that drone a tip, and that drone is going to deliver it as speedily and securely as a driver would. But there'd probably be this long range, that drone fleet wasn't free. The software to figure out how to program the drones to deliver it wasn't free. If they set up these secure boxes that are on my porch, where when the drone delivers this product, it's in a box, and then they take my empty box, that's all not free. And so there's going to be this structural interface cost that's going to be divided over 5-10 years of the program, where I'll be paying a little bit more for that delivery over the lifetime of that drone's use. So, and then they got responding to price changes, and how, say, if I get free shipping from Amazon, how does eBay or how does other online entities like Walmart, how do they respond to that? And in some cases, Walmart, you got their store delivery, and they'll even meet you at the curb. You don't even have to get out of the car. They'll load it in your vehicle for you if you order from Walmart. They've got other stores doing that now. Your groceries can be picked up, at the curb, and you just, they put them in your car. So these different types of new incentives they have for transporting, providing services to the end customer, a lot of those have to do with the newness of it and how much of a demand there is. Has anybody used any of those services where you had either a product delivered to your house within a few hours, or you ordered something online, picked it up at a store, or you went to the grocery store where all your list and everything was picked up and they brought it out to your car? Has anybody used any of those?
I have used one of those services that you order online and go to the store the same day. Yes.
How did you like that? Would you do it again?
Yeah, I will, because I didn't want to wait for that 3-day delivery or whatever, so I just opted to go to the store and pick it up. And when I got there, or it was already paid for, I liked it, but the only thing I hated about it was, even though I had forgotten my driver's license in the car, but I had other IDs, but that's the only way they will give it to me. I had the card that I bought with, I had a checkbook, but they wouldn't give me unless I go to the car to get the driver's license. I hated that about it. Whereas if I was buying it, online and having them deliver it to me, I wouldn't have to worry about driver's license.
I see. And why do you think, did they tell you why they did that, or why do you think that they had you have some kind of a picture ID to pick that up?
I guess maybe for fraudulent, just in case maybe somebody was using my ID or my credit card or something to make this purchase. That's what I'm thinking. And then maybe because maybe they don't have the address, so they didn't want it to be delivered at home. That's why they wanted to come to the store to pick it up. So that's the only reason that I think maybe they did that.
You would think they would want to explain that to you so they could, still say there, hey, look, we're providing you this great customer service, but this is an additional safety feature to ensure that nobody tries to steal your identity, or, you think they'd be more forthright in telling you why they did that. Well,
Yeah,
go ahead. Go ahead.
oh, they didn't explain that part to me. They just said I have to have the ID, and it was very inconvenient to me because I was coming from church. I had high heels working across the parking lot and all that stuff, so I needed it.
Uh, yeah, I had, anybody else want to tell us about using one of these services? Well, I'd like, go ahead.
I bought a TV for Black Friday or whatever online through Walmart, and they had asked for like an alternate pickup person if I wanted somebody else to pick it up, and they had the information there that you needed your ID to pick up. But I liked it, but I don't know. I would do it again. It was pretty convenient. I didn't have to wait in lines or anything.
And was there a price for that? Did you have to pay extra for it?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. My son called me. He'll be 39 Monday, and he's like 14, really. He's still a teenager or wannabe teenager. But he called me and said, "Hey, Dad, my battery's dead on my car." And I said, "Well, where are you?" And he was like 40 miles away. And I said, "Well, is there a auto parts store somewhere around there?" He says, "Yeah, one right across the street." And I said, "Well, I'm going to order a battery online, and it usually says like you got an hour and you can come pick it up." I said, "Why don't you just walk over there and tell them, hey, I'm picking up a battery, and see if they'll bring it across the street and put it in for you." And he was still on the phone with me when the transaction went through, and he went over and talked to him and said, "Hey, I'm out of town, and I don't have a lot of cash with me, so my dad bought this battery for me to get me back home, and here's the transaction." I took a picture of the screen and sent it to him. And so the guy got the battery for him, walked across the street, took the old one out, put the new one in, did all of that just from me clicking on their website. Plus, I saved 25% because I ordered it online. So the dude actually did all this service for free. They have free battery installation, and it cost 25% less than if I'd have carried the battery out and put it in myself, because I ordered it online. So I've had some good experiences with it, and then I've had some not so good, like Esther was talking about. When you show up and you don't have your ID with you, they don't care. It was the curbside pickup for CVS, and I ordered, I had some stuff on sale there, but if I did the curbside pickup, then I'd save $10. So I got $10 worth of stuff. And when I showed up, it's basically free until, you pay it, and then you get this coupon that's $10 off. So I was getting it for free. Yeah, I've had, but didn't have my ID with me, like in Esther's situation, and it was a major hassle to go back home, come back out to the CVS, and to get my stuff and to get the discount that they offer me. So they still got some things to work through, some glitches to work through, but they're working that out. So, but that's where this special type of initiatives for new services, that's where that's coming from. In the future, we can just lay around on the couch and like drown in our own food crumbs, because we never get off of it. So here's, we got the corporate objective, your competitive strategy, knowing what stage the life cycle of the product's in, like if it's in growth, maturity, decline, and then knowing what market that you're going to actually deliver it to. So there's a lot to do with marketing here. It mentions it a couple times when we're talking about transportation. And so we're kind of all linked in here together when it comes to delivering a service. We have to know who we're delivering it to, how often we would be doing that, and whether we're doing a good job or not. All of that is marketing functions. And so these are different from marketing. These are different type of pricing strategies. And so if we look at survival-based pricing, that might be a brand new service that you're offering. Say you just got a delivery van and you're going to try to get people to buy furniture from you, then you're selling them your furniture and you're going to deliver for free. You're losing money every time you do that, but you're selling furniture. And then unit volume pricing, let's say same scenario, you got this new delivery van and you make cookies, you got a bakery or something, and you tell them if you buy 10 dozen, we'll deliver for free. So you give this unit volume pricing to provide that service. And then your profit maximization, this would be like, okay, it costs me $1 to make a dozen of those donuts. I'm going to sell them for $4, make maximum profit, and I'm going to charge them $5 to deliver it. So I made the most money I could on both ends of it, the transportation and the actual product sale. And then we got sales based, like if it's today's Valentine's Day, congratulations ladies, another holiday design for you. Anybody got plans? They going to dinner or anything today?
I got work.
Movies.
I'm sitting by myself with my dog.
I didn't get anything.
Come on, you guys are. I'm getting depressed. I got to stay away from sharp objects. Come on. Well, you know, we get wrapped around the axle on being busy and at work, and some of these, if you don't want to say it's a major holiday, it's like a minor holiday. They slip through the cracks. But my wife sort of made us reservations for. We're going to the Firebird or something. It's a restaurant up north. We've been there before. It's a very nice restaurant. It's pricey. So
I'm going to Dairy Queen and getting their new singles blizzard.
that was my idea to do, but it didn't make. It didn't work with her. So, but yeah, this is one of those days. If we look at pricing here, they had a Groupon, a sale on folks who wanted to come to that restaurant on Valentine's Day. That's my wife. She can squeeze $5 out of a quarter. But so it's sales-based pricing is what made me think of that, is there was this holiday or this Groupon sale, and that's how we're going there. Market share pricing, are we getting more than our share of the market? Are we selling to more people like Valentine's dinners than our competition? Then we can afford to maybe make it a less discounted price. And then the social responsibility pricing. Has anybody ever bought anything at Starbucks?
I just did today.
I'll never do it again.
Don't plan on it.
Those folks wrote the book on social responsibility. They want to tell their clientele that when they got the Juan picking the beans, you know, off the coffee commercial, that Juan's getting paid $25 an hour and his donkey gets a massage every day. They're being socially responsible by giving a living wage to the folks that they deal with in these third world countries. And then they don't use any type of, they're being social responsible, so they don't use any type of non-recycled products, but they got foil wrapper on everything. But they use recycled hemp bags to carry their coffee in, and then they smoke the bags, of course. But this social responsibility pricing, sometimes that's a scam, where you find out that people aren't using organic, and they're not dealing with fair wage. This is not to say that Starbucks isn't doing it. They are, and that's why supposedly part of their cost is wrapped up in that, is they're being socially responsible. But these are the different objectives of the different pricing, and you get exposed to this in marketing classes, but we have to know this in transportation, because let's say we're dealing with moving recyclable cardboard, from our first little example of moving a truckload of cardboard. We're being socially responsible because we're going to transport that recycled material for cost. We're not going to charge them any major upsell on that. And it could be that we're just providing that because we have a backhaul that's empty, but we could sell it as being socially responsible by charging them the floor, not the ceiling price that we could, but the floor price just to cover our operating expenses. So these are, when you come to marketing, where people are having conversations and they're talking about how they want to set up their businesses, these are different, and you don't necessarily have to stay with one of these different objectives. You can move to other ones. And here's where demand, which is pulling things into a supply chain or pulling things into transportation, it's the customer that says, I want such and such numbers of these. Well, then that starts this whole transaction on getting that to the customer. And if the customer says, well, I only want to pay $2 for it, now there's a cost-based channel that goes all the way back that says, who's got the cheapest way to get it here? They don't care to wait another couple days. They just don't want to pay full price for getting it here. And then you got profit-based. If you do the backwards through the slide here, it's where, again, you're looking for low price, but it has to be high quality, because if we're selling at a profit, we've charged a premium. We want to make sure that that comes through in the quality of the service, that it was delivered on time and it was delivered to the right person, the right product showed up there. And then competition based. So if I'm making a price and I find out FedEx is charging $5.99 and I'm UPS, I'll say, oh, well, we're $5.98. And we can just undersell it, or we can make a better offer than our competition. And we might say, and we can deliver it an hour earlier, or we can pick it up at your house instead of at your work. So these are different ways that we set price levels, and whatever they're based on, we look through what the price level is for that different type of demand, or that different type of basics. And we can find out through surveys and watch what it was historically to figure out what our costs are going to be before we can make even a offer to them on what we can perform that service. Okay, we're getting to the end here. This is talking about making price adjustments, and it could be that we're giving discounts for larger shipments, or for rewards for being a long-term customer, or for paying cash where we don't have to carry you on the books for 30 days. And then, of course, if we have in Indianapolis, we have all of these different warehouses for like Amazon and Walmart, Target. If I order something and I'm in Indianapolis and the warehouse is in Plainfield, I'm going to get a discount there because of the geography between me and where it comes from. And this gives the rule of thumb for each of those. That was my alarm. saying that the class is coming to an end. So we don't want to be, these are the mistakes. We probably want to touch that. Don't be over-reliance on cost-based pricing, because trying to do it cheap doesn't necessarily satisfy the customer. And then failing to react or to capitalize on marketing changes. If I can get fuel prices down 10 cents a gallon, then I may not use rail. I might go to truck to get it delivered, and make my customers happier by saving them the money. Price set independent from the marketing mix. Don't make that mistake. The marketing mix basically is telling us what our people are interested in and what their demands are. And if we make set the price not knowing what that information is, then we could be out of business. One price for all mentality. Don't make that mistake, because there's different special handling and there's different destinations. There's different characteristics of a full truckload and a partial truckload that we have to abide by. And then don't make price independent from all the other parts of the operation. It needs to be a key component of how your operation works. So this kind of is a dry, here's how we price stuff, and here's the different methodologies that they come up with rates, and they come up with classifications of freight. That's a lot of deep stuff, and it's when you get into the work environment, it's in software, it's in books, it's in your standard operating procedures that you're going to be exposed to there. But this is just to give you exposure to how we come up with prices. Two different companies could have two different methods of coming up with the price that keeps them successful. And it's just understanding why they made those decisions and how that works for them. So I'm going to stop our recording.